What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Action Network podcast presented by BetMGM. I'm your host, Chris Raybon of the Action Network. Today, we've got our NFL player projections for Week 17. We're going to run through the top five at each position, discuss guys we're high and low on, and, of course, throw out some props. Here to break it down with me, one of the top fantasy football rankers in the game, the odds maker, Sean Kerner. Sean, how's your holidays and how's it going?
What's up? Yeah, it's pretty good. I had no official bets, nothing on Christmas, so just got to spend time, with family. Not sweating anything, just some fantasy implications, things like that. But had a really good Christmas. What about you?
Yeah, same. Got a lot of food. I think I still got the itis as we record this on Tuesday. I had the only thing I had on Christmas was the Ravens, which is good because I think I was 500 throughout the weekend, so and that put me one over. But on to Week 17 already, and man, it's flown by, but it should be an interesting finish with all these playoff spots up for grabs. A lot of parity this year, so good season so far. Well, for some, I guess the backup quarterback, some don't like all that, but I thought it was pretty interesting. And speaking of which, let's get right into quarterback for Week 17. Who you got in your top five?
Let's see. I got Jalen Hurts, Dak Prescott, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, and Patrick Mahomes.
I got Hurts, Prescott, Allen. No, sorry. Hurts, Prescott, Jackson, Purdy, and Allen. Purdy.
Pretty much the same. We're just flopping Mahomes and Purdy. Really.
Yeah, which, I mean, both of them had miserable games.
Holy shit.
Yeah. I mean, I think Purdy's a good bet to bounce back. The Chiefs, I don't even know what's going on with them right now. It's going to be interesting to see how they finish out the season and assuming they make the playoffs, how that goes. But who are you high on?
I'm high on Baker Mayfield, and if you told me heading into Week 1 that I'd have Baker Mayfield as a top 10 quarterback in Fantasy Finals Week, I would have said you're crazy, but that's where we are. He just continues to play at a high level, and last week, again, he had another great game, 280-plus yards, 2 touchdowns against the Jaguars. Gets to face the Saints at home here, and I think the Saints are an overrated defense. They've had a very easy schedule. Just looking at the last 6 weeks, they faced Tyson Bagent, Josh Dobbs, Desmond Ridder, Bryce Young, Tommy DeVito, Matthew Stafford, torched them. So I think this is a spot where Baker Mayfield should have a good game. I don't think Marshawn Lattimore will be able to return this week. That's something to monitor, but that's always been, Mike Evans' Achilles heel. He's gotten him ejected a couple times, but no Lattimore here, probably going to see peak Evans again. So either way, Baker is a top 10 option this week. He's getting his career back on track. I think, there's some guys with some dicey matchups that we'll get to later, but I think you could trust Baker Mayfield as a QB1 this week in your fantasy finals.
Yeah, I think that's the second or third week in a row that one of us has been high on him on the pod too. So Baker playing well, like that one. I'm going with Matthew Stafford. He's a QB 14 in consensus. I think he's a startable top 12 quarterback this week against the Giants. I know the game script, you're not expecting the Giants to give the Rams a whole lot of trouble necessarily, but they were feisty against Philadelphia on Monday. Stafford's been a top 10 quarterback in 4 of the last 5, never outside the top 16, 14 touchdowns, no picks in the last 5. And the Giants are below average in pass defense DVOA at 20th. So like Stafford to continue to roll.
I think this is like one of the best stretches of his career. Like he's playing that well right now.
Yeah, Demarcus Robinson of all people has helped him him out. Who you low
on? So I'm low on Tua this week. He opens as my QB 18, and it makes sense. He's facing the Ravens that just handed Brock Purdy his worst game of his career, and it's. So this is a brutal matchup for Tua, and just the fact that Tua offers literally 0 rushing stats, it just makes it tougher for him to have, an out here for a useful fantasy score. So we're going to have to monitor Jalen Waddle's status. It sounds like he might have a high ankle sprain. Looking very iffy for this week. So if he's out, that's obviously a huge loss because it's going to make it that much easier for the Ravens to potentially scheme up ways to slow down Tyreek Hill. Which will obviously hurt Tua as well. So this is a brutal spot for people like me that have been leaning on Tua all season long, where I don't know, like a guy like Baker Mayfield, I would certainly start over him. Maybe a guy like Nick Mullins, it's just a brutal spot to be trusting Tua. So I'm super low on him. If you have him, you have to be making other plans, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially if Waddle can't go. I think if Waddle's in, it's a little, he's probably still a fringe starter, but at least you have two guys that can just blow the lid off the defense and kind of will Tua to a big game. Whereas if he's out, it's just Tyreek. It's a little tougher for Tua. So definitely agree there. Jared Goff for me, he's QB 10 in expert consensus. I think he's another one of those guys that's kind of on the outside looking in of the QB1 ranks. I know Dallas expecting a higher scoring game. It's not outdoors or anything like that, but Dallas is still number 8 in pass defense DVOA, and they've only allowed 3 20-point games to quarterbacks. That pass rush still, I think, is going to give Goff problems. And the Lions, they can lead on the run when they want to. I think against Dallas, that makes a lot of sense. So I don't know if he'll have the volume unless Detroit gets, down big or Dallas puts up a massive score, which is possible, but still think Jared Goff is a little risky this week going against that Cowboy D. All right. We both went 1-1 last week on props. You're the book for quarterbacks. What you got?
This is an ugly one. I mentioned, I'm considering benching Tua in one of my finals. Mm-hmm. And there's a guy that I'm at least opening the week with him, as a QB1, and I was really high on him last week, and it was Nick Mullins. I think he's still the starting quarterback for the Vikings. I don't know, but who's going to have more fantasy points this week? So let's just say a standard scoring system like Fantasy Pros, 4 points for passing touchdown. Mm-hmm. Nick Mullins or Tua? Straight up. Who's going to have more fantasy points?
Ooh, that's tough because Hawkinson obviously hurts.
Right, going on and Waddle on the other side.
Yeah, you got Waddle. Is Waddle's not officially out though? Like he's got a chance, right?
Yeah, so. He's got a chance. I feel like he's played through injuries before. Like he's a grinder. So if he can get out there, I think he will be. But yeah, Hawkinson, unfortunately, that was ACL and MCL as well. So he's out, mm-hmm. and Nick Mullins just threw 4 picks, so he's at risk of an in-game benching. But as of now, I'm projecting Mullins higher. But just curious between these two, who you have more points.
If Mullins gets benched, like if Mullins doesn't start, it's no action, or
correct? Yeah, I'm assuming he's starting. I haven't heard anything.
Oh, that's tough. And then Addison's questionable as well.
Yep.
Ooh, that's I gotta go Tua. Because I think Mullins is at risk of an in-game benching, and he lost 2 of his. I mean, probably lost. He lost at least 1, if not 2, of his top 3. Which Tua. I mean, Waddle is just one guy. So yeah, I think there's more risk right now with Mullins. I would have loved it. If he didn't throw 4 picks and didn't get his whole team hurt. Green Bay is terrible against the pass, 30th in DVOA, but I just gotta go Tua here and hope him and Tyreek, regardless of what else is going on.
Yeah, maybe I could have used like Russell Wilson or somebody, but either way, there's going to be some weird sit-start decisions this week, I think.
Running back, we got in the top 5.
Christian McCaffrey, Kyron Williams, Rashad White, James Cook, and Isaiah Pacheco.
I got McCaffrey, Kyron, Rashad White, Saquon, and Alvin Kamara.
Nice.
Who are you high on?
I'm high on Jaleel McLaughlin. He's my RB 37 against the Chargers. And, most people in the fantasy finals probably don't need to tap into players ranked outside of my top 35 this week. But McLaughlin's like an interesting flyer for anybody that's in a pinch. The Broncos' playoffs hopes are shot now. And they have a easy matchup this week against the Chargers. So it could be a leading game script, which should mean more playing time for McLaughlin over Samaje Perine, who's more of the pass-catching back. But I think McLaughlin could actually start to eat into Javante's workload more this week. He's looked really good this year, looked good last week. He just has that big play ability where I think he could break a couple big plays here against the Chargers. I think it's a great spot for him. And he's interesting where usually when he's on the field, he's getting a touch, whether it's a run play or if it's a passing play. He's being targeted on a ridiculous 40% of his routes run. So this is just a spot where he could see a spike in playing time, which means he has a ton of upside. So he's a bit of a dice roll, outside of the RB3 flex range, but just a guy that kind of stuck out to me where he has a really high ceiling and more likely to hit it here. So if you're like a big underdog or something, want to tap into, a sneaky play like this, I think McLaughlin might be that guy.
Yeah, it's surprising that he hasn't gotten more of a role. I mean, Javonte Williams really has struggled since coming back from injury. It hasn't been great for him. So yeah, maybe now that Denver is kind of on the outside looking in, we'll see more of Jaleel because I thought he looked good too. I'm high on somebody in that same game, Austin Eckler. New coaching staff. He's the RB25 in consensus, but I think he should be back in the top 20, going up against Denver. He played on 64% of the snaps last week, got 18 touches, 15 carries, 4 targets. You're going up against Denver's bottom 3 defense in terms of run defense, DVOA. So I think Eckler is kind of, the new coaching staff is not playing as many games with, whatever. There was like an open carry competition, but, Kellen Moore's still there, obviously. So it's not like a whole lot changed, but it just seemed like, the Chargers last week, new coaching staff and everything, Eckler kind of got restored to his normal role and whatnot. And he's got the long rest. So I don't think there's going to be anything to kind of knock him out. I think he's just going to kind of resume his normal role. So I think he's still a top 20 guy. Obviously not that number 2 overall pick that he was for a lot of people, number 2 or 3, but I still think he's ranked a little too low.
Yeah, the coaching change was good for him. And if you look ahead, our favorite week next week, the incentives, I think he needed to average 71 scrimmage yards a game to start hitting his incentives. I don't know beyond that. But last week it was like 86. So I think the new coaching regime will help him be on that track. So that's something to look for where I don't think he wants to just sit out the rest of the season. I think he wants to start, making some of those incentives too.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Who are you low on?
So I'm sticking in this RB3 flex range. Not a real important guy, but Tyler Algier is my RB45 against the Bears this week. He's coming off another really solid game, 86 yards and a touchdown. He's been, one of the better backup running backs to have this year. And one of the main reasons why Bijan Robinson was sort of a bust as a, top 3 pick this year. But he hasn't really had a chance to shine because Bijan has been healthy every week. But I don't think this is the week to trust him, even if he's, on your fringe to start decisions because, the Falcons are 3-point dogs at Chicago. And the Bears have a really good run defense. So this is just a really tough matchup for Algier and one where the Falcons might not be able to, provide enough volume for Robinson and Algier to both have fantasy relevant games. So this is more a Bijan game. And Algier's, like I said, outside of my top 40, he's been nice, in certain spots. I think he has been a trustworthy RB3 flex, but with no teams on a bye, brutal matchup, and Falcons as dogs, I think this is the week you got to make sure he's on your bench.
Yeah, it's just so hard to predict that backfield, but yeah, it's better to proceed with caution, I think, than you try to risk it with. And he's not even obviously the starter, still the number 2 back. So totally agree. Kind of similar type of back here. Gus Edwards I'm low on. He's the RB30 in consensus. And again, it's just another one of these guys where the floor is just low. And we saw it last week, even with Keaton Mitchell out. Justice Hill outsnapped Edwards 42-29, had more carries and more routes than Edwards. So, yes, Edwards, I think, got a touchdown, but you're going to see if he doesn't get a touchdown, there's a chance for him to, almost goose egg, depending especially if he keeps that kind of rolling. The fact that they were up big, they got up 3 scores and Edwards still wasn't able to outsnap Hill. Now you have another one of these games where it's going to be against one of the top teams in the league. So this usage for Hill could continue. It's just another one where I don't think you want to risk it unless you really have to with Gus this week. All right, let's see. For the running back prop, let's go with Javonte Williams rushing yards because he's kind of just been falling down everyone's ranks. He's had under 30 rushing yards each of the last 2 games. Let's set the line at 55.5.
Ooh, that's a good line. I have it just a little bit higher, but that's probably where my median is. I'll go over. I still, think of him as like a low end RB2, and I like McLaughlin this week. I think both backs should see enough volume. But that's good. I'll have to go with the over. His passing game usage has really taken a hit. I think he had the lowest routes run rate of the season last week. But Russell Wilson has to be targeting his running backs at the highest rate, right? Because every single running back,
he is.
Yeah. So he loves dinking and dunking or throwing deep, which makes sense. But yeah, I'm gonna stick with Javante's over here. It's a good lineup.
It's a tough one to set. I mean, I think he's at risk of kind of what you're saying, like almost like an in-game benching or just a benching flat out. I think even McLaughlin got like the nominal start a couple of weeks ago, but he didn't get many touches. And then, but Williams continues to struggle. So it's a tough line to set. But we'll see how that goes. Wide receiver top 5 we got.
CeeDee Lamb, Tyreek Hill, Justin Jefferson, AJ Brown, and Amon-Ra St. Brown.
I got Jefferson, Lamb, Tyreek, AJ, and Amon-Ra. Jefferson, he was my number one last week. He's my number one now with guys hurt. I mean, he seems like he's back. And Tyreek will probably he might bump up a spot to number 2, maybe even number 1. Just depends on what's going on with Waddle. But that Raven defense is so tough that it's still Hill's probably a tiny bit riskier than he is most weeks. But if Waddle's out, I still think Hill is gonna, he'll get his targets. So. Who are you high
on? Nico Collins. He's opening the week as my wide receiver 19 against the Titans. And, last week he bailed out his fantasy managers with that touchdown, but he only caught, 4 passes for 18 yards. So hopefully CJ Stroud returns this week. It's concerning CJ Stroud wasn't able to play last week. Like, I hope he's okay. So hopefully he returns this week, which will just be a massive boost for the passing game in general. But specifically Nico Collins, this is a pass funnel defense, and the Titans, the Texans aren't home. This is just a blow up spot for someone like Nico Collins, who, hasn't had a full game with CJ Stroud ever since Tank Dell went down. So I think Nico's going to be the number 1 target going forward, which gives him massive upside. So this is a week where he's been kind of on the sit start fringe the past few weeks because, as Case Keenum and then Davis Mills came in the game, but with CJ Stroud back, like he's back in the top 20 for me.
Yeah, I know. I did see Stroud apparently suffered, I guess, a more serious concussion than most. So yeah, hopefully he's back. The fact that he wasn't really able to do much the last couple of weeks is concerning. But I mean, even if you do get another game of the backups, I think Nico, he's kind of established himself, this season period as that kind of top dog. So I think he should still be pretty solid this week. For me, it's a couple guys. First is Cooper Kupp. He's down to the wide receiver 27 in ECR. And I know he's been kind of up and down. He's had some drops, this and that. But I still think 27 is way too low. I still think he's, kind of a mid-range to high-end wide receiver 2 at worst, because he's running a route on every single drop back. He's not coming out of the game. He's in there on every pass snap, and he's having, like I said, some uncharacteristic drops that's something you don't really expect from Cooper Kupp. And it's really, Kupp, Nakua, Demarcus Robinson has been great. He's not going to catch 6-7 balls every game, especially not at the expense of Cooper Kupp. Like maybe they all do, but certainly I don't think Robinson at the expense of Kupp. So still like Kupp to deliver here. I think it is kind of frustrating, some because he's just leaving yards and touchdowns on the table. But I don't kind of doubt Cooper Kupp, especially now, like at this fantasy finals. Like I think he's one of the best receivers in the league. He's going up against a shaky defense. He'll get one-on-one opportunities because the Giants will blitz Matthew Stafford. So I think you go back to Kupp here. As as your wide receiver 2 or even wide receiver 1 if you have to. Rashid Shaheed too. He's a wide receiver 43 in consensus, but he ran around at 93% of the dropbacks last week, a season high. And remember, no Michael Thomas, A.T. Perry's, he's playing kind of more as that third wide receiver role. So Shaheed now is the top 2 guy. He's getting like true starter snaps. He's super explosive going against the Tampa Bay defense that has been shaky against the pass all season long in terms of giving up fantasy production. So I think Rashid Shaheed indoors makes for a very good play as well. Okay, now who are you low on?
I'm low on DK Metcalf. He opens the week as my wide receiver 28. Admittedly, I don't think he's going to stay that low, but either way, this is a tough spot against the Steelers. DK's been pretty touchdown dependent, the last few weeks. And this could just be a tougher matchup because the Steelers have been using Joey Porter Jr. to shadow, the team's top wide receiver. I would say right now that is DK Metcalf. Last week they did that with T. Higgins. He ended up having a big game, but his two biggest catches, if you watch them, it was more of a zone defense where Porter Jr. started on him, but it was somebody else that kind of let T. Higgins catch the ball. But I think this week they're going to do a better job, scheming up to potentially slow down DK Metcalf. I think if you have him, you're probably still playing him, if I'm being honest, but we're just going to have to lower expectations a little bit because he's, had a couple games where I think he didn't top 55 yards, but he scored a touchdown. So he's been posting, wide receiver 1 numbers, but if he doesn't have a touchdown, he could leave you wanting more or having somebody on your bench you should have played. So he's just somebody to just be cautious with and maybe lower expectations. But like I said, he's opening the week as my wide receiver 28.
Yeah, it's been a weird season for DK. When you doubt him, he produces. When you think he's good, he has a quiet game. It's been a little bit tough nut to crack. But yeah, for me, it's Josh Downs. He's wide receiver 37 in consensus, going up against the Vegas Raiders. And whether Pittman is back or not, I think Downs you got to downgrade him a little bit because he's failed to top 43 yards in his last 7 games. Pittman out last game didn't really lead to a much fantasy production for Downs. So he might have hit that rookie wall. He has been playing through an injury, and it looks like it may be kind of slowing him down, sapping some of the explosiveness. Really haven't seen him break off his patented big plays that he was earlier in the year. We haven't really seen him get in the end zone much either lately. So I think Downs is the guy that wide receiver 37. That's on that wide receiver 3 fringe. I think he's more of a true wide receiver 4, even if Pittman does miss again. All right, what do you got for the prop?
We're going with George Pickens receiving yards. He's been a nightmare to project. He's in that Gabe Davis tier. Yep. Like you just have a DK Metcalf. The weeks you doubt him, he goes off. The weeks you think it's safe to play, he puts up a dud. So fantasy football finals, wide receiver 3, flex, sit, start decisions. What are you doing with George Pickens? And, his receiving prop, his median is really hard to project, but I'm going to set the line at 50.5. And it sounds like Mason Rudolph is starting again. So
yeah,
does that help? Does that help your projection for Pickens at all? Does it not matter?
I think it does help with Mason Rudolph starting because it seemed like Mason Rudolph was, looking for Pickens more, and with the types of plays that Pickens is good at, which are downfield passes and whatnot. So 50.5 against Seattle, that's a good line. I'm gonna go. I'll lean over. That's actually right where I have it, so that's a great line. But I'll lean over just because I think there could be some unrealized kind of upside there with Rudolph targeting him a little more. So yeah, I'll lean over. But that's a great line. Who do you have in your top 5 at tight end for week 17?
Travis Kelce, George Kittle, Trey McBride, Evan Ingram, and Jake Ferguson.
I got Kelce, McBride, Kittle, Laporta, and Ferguson. Who are you high on?
I'm high on Tyler Conklin. He's my tight end 16 against the Browns. Hopefully you're all set at tight end this week and don't need to tap into Tyler Conklin. But I think he's more of a DFS player prop type of play this week, and fringe top 15 option in season long leagues. But Jeremy Ruckert's out. He's already been ruled out this week. And CJ Uzoma is still on the IR, and Ruckert's really been kind of eating into Conklin's playing time a lot the past few weeks, ever since the Jets kind of went with the youth movement, trying to scout out players for next year and beyond. So it'll only be Kenny Yeboah backing up Conklin this week. So I think Conklin, he topped 80% routes run last week, should top that again this week. He might see 85 to 90% route participation. And he has 3 straight games now of 4 receptions. So he has a pretty solid floor this week. And admittedly, this is a tough matchup. The Browns have been really good against tight ends this year, but linebacker Anthony Walker's been out the past couple of games, and they've been pretty vulnerable as a result. Cole Kmet and Dalton Schultz both had solid games with Anthony Walker out. So that's another part of my projection is if Anthony Walker is still ruled out, I might move Conklin up a bit. If he's back, I might move him down. So again, it's still early. It's Tuesday. There's a lot of other factors at play, but this could be, a sneaky spot for Conklin to catch 4 or 5 balls this week.
Yeah, definitely. The volume's been decent for him most of the year. The thing that hurts him is just the touchdown equity with the Jets. Yeah. Obviously not providing too much, but he's had some decent high volume games. So I still think Oliver's the guy to own. For Minnesota with Hawkinson going on IR. Munt played a little more, but Munt is more of a blocking tight end. Oliver did have a 33-yard catch last week, and he's had some decent games in the past when he's had higher volume. So even if he has a 50-50 split, he's much more likely to get targeted on like a per route basis than a guy like Johnny Munt. So against Green Bay, who's bottom 5 in DVOA against tight ends, I do think Oliver is still on that tight end 2 radar this week, in deeper leagues, because it's just that position all year has just been kind of a nightmare. And Green Bay is one of the worst defenses. I think Oliver does have some receiving chops where Munt, I don't really see the same for him. So like Oliver, who are you low on?
I'm low on Dalton Kincaid. He's my tight end 17 to open the weekend. Holy crap. If you were banking on him being a tight end 1 for you in the fantasy playoffs, you have been hating life, because he is combined for 1 catch and 7 yards the past 2 weeks. And it wasn't too surprising to see his production, take a bit of a hit once Dawson Knox returned 3 weeks ago. But he's at rock bottom. Last week, he had a 52% routes run rate, was in a pretty much 50-50 timeshare with Dawson Knox. And I think, a lot of it is also due to this shoulder injury he's dealing with. So he's not even healthy. So they've been just, kind of treating this like a full-blown 50-50 committee. I don't think we could trust him this week in our fantasy finals against the Patriots. This could be a more run-heavy game plan anyway. So I would look elsewhere. I know he had that really amazing stretch where he was like a top 5, maybe top 3 option sometimes. But as of now, he's outside my top 15.
Yeah, it's been a struggle. Yeah, he's outside of my top. He's like my tight end 21 actually. So that's fair. It's just been downhill for him. For me, it is Tucker Kraft. Tougher matchup against Minnesota. They're allowing the 7th fewest schedule adjusted receiving yards per game, 2 tight ends, according to FTN. But you also might get Musgrave back. They activated. They started his practice window, so we'll see how that transpires. But could get some other guys back too. Could get Reed back. Could get Watson back. So I think this is a tougher week for Kraft. So he's the tight end 12 in ECR. But I think that's a little high for him, especially with so much uncertainty. All right, where are you going for the prop?
This is your prop.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Whoops.
Where are you going with the prop?
I'm going. Let's see. Where am I going? That's a good question. Let's go with Kincaid. Actually, let's go with Kincaid.
Ooh, good one.
I'm gonna set the line at 28.5 receiving yards.
I set it in my head at 27.5. So I'm gonna have to lean under. One of the things with Dawson Knox back, we've seen Kincaid's ADOT take a hit too. Last week it was just 2.5 yards downfield. Looks like since Knox has been back, it's been around 3.5 yards downfield. So that's no fun. So even if he catches a couple balls, he could stay under. That's a great line. I'm 1 yard lower though, so give me the under.
All right, got you. But Kincaid. I mean, it's been so frustrating. But I agree with you. I don't think you can really trust him. DFS maybe a little different. He could, guys having a bad stretch, always good bets to bounce back at lower ownership. But in terms of just week to week season long in a championship, I don't think you want to trust him. That's going to do it for our Week 17 NFL Player Projections episode of the Action Network podcast presented by BetMGM. For more great fantasy content from Sean and I, check out our full fantasy preview episode out right now over on the Fantasy Flex podcast channel. If you're into betting, of course, be sure to check out our weekly betting preview episode every Thursday with Stuckey, who's been just absolutely killing it, just red hot. I don't know if he's lost a 6-pack bet in a month. We got the Best Bets episode each week with Brandon Anderson, Luke Swain, as well. And we got the Favorites podcast, so check that out as well. ActionNetwork.com for all of our NFL betting and fantasy content, FantasyLabs.com for our DFS tools and models. Don't forget, we got the Action Network Discord server, link in the episode description. Sean is on X at @_oddsmaker. I'm at Chris Raybon. We're at those same handles on the free, award-winning Action Network app. Until next time, let's get this money.